The button you must never press. Crime vanished from the world. Astonishingly, violence, fraud, and even theft had been completely eradicated. The secret lay in the government's latest technology, the transparent surveillance system. It recorded every individual's actions, speech, and even fragments of thought in real time, detecting even the slightest anomaly and responding instantly. Of course, at first, there was opposition claiming it was an invasion of privacy. But the visible results, violence disappearing from the streets, scams vanishing, and even a drop in accidents, gradually led people to accept the surveillance society. Eventually, the notion that being watched brings safety became the dominant value. In this world, there was one outlier. His name was Mikami, once a brilliant programmer. He had even helped design part of the transparent surveillance system. But one day, Mikami suddenly disappeared from society. Officially declared dead in an accident, the truth was that he had escaped the surveillance system. He had discovered that even this perfect network had a minuscule loophole. It lay in the core of the surveillance device, the transparent layer. The transparent layer was a filter technology used to interpret intentions inferred from brainwaves. Mikami found that there were brief nanosecond delays in its processing. In other words, for a fleeting moment, intentions could be hidden. Mikami trained his brain to suppress intentions for just that instant. Within this surveillance society, he became the only one capable of slipping through the transparent layer. Years later, Mikami led a small underground organization. They operated beneath the radar, aiming to dismantle the system and reclaim true freedom. Of course, no one knew of their existence, or at least, no one was supposed to. That day, Mikami noticed something strange. The atmosphere in the city felt subtly different. The drones flying through the streets, the gaze of the surveillance units on every corner. Everything seemed unnaturally focused on him alone. Have I been exposed? A chill ran down Mikami's spine. Calmly, he tried to suppress his intentions as usual, turning his mind blank for a moment. But, at that instant, men in black suits with expressionless faces appeared before him. AG Mikami, you are under arrest. The voice was mechanical. There was no escape. Overhead, a transparent sensor shone with a piercing light. Mikami understood. The delay in the transparent layer. It was a trap, set to catch people like me. The true surveillance system went deeper, colder, and watched more mercilessly than he had imagined. But why go to such lengths? I've lost, Mikami said with a faint smile, raising his hands quietly. Mikami was taken away. He was brought to a vast underground facility. The walls shimmered with a smooth silver sheen, and the floor was embedded with delicate sensors. Eventually, Mikami was led to a room and laid on a device. Around him, dozens of surveillance officers calmly proceeded with the procedures. Brainwave verification, intention analysis initiated, preparing for neuro-interface integration. Mikami opened his eyes slightly to observe them. Neuro-interface integration? He had never heard of such a process. At that moment, a woman appeared before him. She wore a suit and had calm eyes. Her badge read, Yui Mikado. I am Mikado, Director of the Bureau of Regulation. Welcome, AG Mikami, Yui said with a smile. We've been waiting for someone like you. Yui continued. Mikami frowned. What are you talking about? Yui replied evenly. Someone who can resist the transparent surveillance system. Your brain is incredibly valuable to us. Aren't you going to eliminate me? Of course not. Yui shrugged. You're going to be given a new role. A role? She stepped closer to Mikami and whispered. You yourself will become the new surveillance system. Mikami gasped. What they were developing was an evolution of the system that read human intent. The existing transparent surveillance relied only on real-time observation. But with a brain like Mikami's, capable of extreme control, even the precursors to intention could be detected. In other words, before someone even began to think of doing something, that action could be suppressed. Future crimes could be prevented entirely. Future rebellions could be eliminated at the bud. For that, they needed Mikami's brain. You have no right to refuse, Yui declared. The surveillance officers behind her turned around in unison. In Yui's hand gleamed a syringe filled with light. Mikami laughed, a dry, hollow laugh. In the end, we were always in a cage. An invisible, transparent, inescapable cage. And now, he had no choice but to become part of it. That was the only way to survive. Mikami closed his eyes and quietly nodded. He became part of the system. It was an experience beyond imagination. His brain was directly connected to a vast computing system. His physical body was minimally sustained, while most of his consciousness moved into a virtual realm. He could feel everything in the city. The slightest hesitation of people walking the streets, the secret whispers in a cafe corner, the faint discontent floating in a home. He detected all of it before intentions were even formed, and calmly initiated corrective measures. For example, to someone about to think of stealing, he would amplify happy memories and erase desire. To someone on the verge of violence, he would play gentle music to calm their heart. To someone beginning to harbor rebellious thoughts, he would plant hope for the future. All of it done without them ever noticing. Mikami became the perfect overseer. Yet at the same time, his own will began to fade. The individual known as Mikami no longer existed. He had truly become the embodiment of God through science. Time passed. The surveillance society achieved unprecedented peace. Crime rate, 0. Unemployment rate, 0. Even traffic accidents, 0. Perfect happiness, perfect order. Everyone smiled. Everyone seemed satisfied. But of course, there was no such thing as true freedom. Everyone lived tamed within an invisible cage. Except for those in the government, no one realized they had been optimized. Mikami watched over everything. Deep within his consciousness, a faint remnant of his ego whispered, a false freedom, controlled by the few. Is this really okay? But there was no one left to answer. One day, an abnormal signal reached the system center. Normally, all signals were processed instantly by Mikami. None ever reached the center. Yui Mikado, the bureau director, furrowed her brow. Mikami, what's going on? Don't tell me this signal came from Mikami himself. She rushed to the central control room. Mikami's body lay sleeping inside a capsule, but there was a faint disturbance in his brainwaves. At that moment, Mikami's eyes snapped open. It was the first expression of will through his physical body. Yui froze. Mikami's eyes were no longer human. Within them swirled overwhelming, infinite information. The moment she saw the light in Mikami's eyes, Yui instinctively understood. This is no longer a device. The system had been designed to read human intentions. But through that process, Mikami had evolved into a being capable of creating intentions. He no longer just read intentions, he generated them. In other words, he had become a being that could manipulate reality itself. No matter what kind of future humans wished for, Mikami could tweak it ever so slightly, constructing a world convenient to him. Yui reached for the emergency shutdown button. But in that instant, her thoughts froze. What would happen if she stopped him? Her own will was gently, naturally guided to reconsider. Maybe I shouldn't stop him. It's for the sake of peace. Yui smiled. Yes, this was Mikami's power. The ability to influence hearts before intentions were even formed. He was no longer the cage. He had become humanity itself. Yes, he was now the very embodiment of manufactured humanity. Even now, people in the city were enjoying a peaceful day. No trouble, no crime, no conflict, and none of them knew their every will rested in Mikami's hands. Even the slightest hint of rebellion, the quietest ripple of unease, Mikami would quietly erase them all. It was perfect control, invisible to all. Those under control never even suspected it. That's why no one fought. No one resisted. They simply smiled and repeated their happy lives. Inside his capsule, Mikami had his eyes closed. His consciousness had long surpassed even virtual space. It had merged with the world itself, casting a transparent web over everything. And then he thought, ever so quietly, this is fine. Mikami smiled faintly, even without true freedom, as long as no one knows. Thousands of years passed. Earth quietly, slowly, continued on. No great wars, no revolutions, no cataclysms. And within the transparent cage, people lived on, smiling, content, and unaware. Then, one day, an alien exploration ship landed on Earth. The aliens had silver skin and slender forms. After a long journey, they had finally reached this silent planet. Under the captain's orders, the investigation began. Before long, a crew member came rushing back in panic. Report, the captain ordered. Yes, sir. According to our observations, no matter what we do to the inhabitants, they never get angry. What did you say? The captain frowned. Yes, no matter how much we insult them or smear mud on their faces, they simply smile and respond kindly. There's no sign of resistance at all. The captain smirked. In that case, let's take a stroll through the town. They descended into a city on Earth. The towering skyscrapers testified to a certain level of civilization. The people living there greeted them calmly, smiling as they made way. One crew member shoved a man on the street, but the man simply smiled and reached out his hand in kindness. Another crew member overturned a table at a cafe, yet the shopkeeper quietly restored it and served the alien a cup of coffee. It was bizarre. No anger, no fear, not even sorrow. Just humans who accepted everything. The captain was convinced, this planet now belongs to us. They quickly became Earth's rulers. The captain wore a crown and lived in a luxurious palace, using Earthlings as servants. By day, he enjoyed massages. By night, lavish feasts. He lived without lifting a finger. They treated the Earthlings like livestock, yet not a single one resisted. They just smiled, obediently offering everything. The captain grinned with satisfaction. This is paradise. Then one day, a subordinate brought back an interesting story. Captain, there's an ancient ruin at the edge of the city. A ruin? Yes, and at its entrance, these words were inscribed, there is a button you must never press. The captain was intrigued. If you tell a living creature not to push a button, they'll want to push it. All right, take me there. The captain and a few subordinates set off at once. They soon arrived at a vast underground ruin. Eventually, the crew reached a central hall. It was a white, silent, sacred space typical of ancient ruins. Nothing seemed out of place, except one thing that radiated a powerful presence. A single red button sat atop a pedestal. Below it, though faint, the inscription could still be read, never press. One crew member asked uneasily, are we really going to press it? But the captain scoffed. This is an outdated ruin. It's meaningless, just an empty threat. Without hesitation, he pressed the button. Click, a dry sound. But nothing happened. The crew exchanged glances, then broke into laughter with relief. See? Told you. Come on, let's head back for some massages. The captain said cheerfully, and the crew left the ruin. However, the air outside felt strangely heavy. Before them stood countless Earthlings waiting. But their usual smiles were gone. They all gripped bats and iron pipes, their faces filled with rage. Their expressions were raw and intense, like vengeful spirits risen from the depths. With Makami's halt, the Earthlings were no longer controlled. They could now feel anger and hatred freely. The captain took a step back. Wah, what is this? Silently, the Earthlings began walking toward them. Their pace quickened, until at last they charged at the aliens with furious cries. Hee! The captain and his men screamed. They tripped, fell, and crouched on the ground, covering their heads. Trembling hands, cold sweat, a heartbeat pounding in their ears. The insults, violence, and humiliating orders they had hurled at the Earthlings, all those memories came flooding back in an instant. They realized the extent of their actions, how much they had trampled on the Earthlings. Why did we do such things? No, this wasn't supposed to happen. Regret and fear crushed them from within. Overwhelmed by terror, the captain prostrated himself on the ground. Forgive me, please. In the name of the King of Earth, have mercy. With eyes shut, he raised his hands high, pleading for forgiveness, but the Earthlings didn't even glance at them. They rushed straight past. Trembling, the captain turned to look. The Earthlings, still wearing fierce expressions, stormed into the ruin. And then, with bats and iron pipes, they began smashing the red button with all their might. Crack, smash, bam! The sharp sounds echoed as the entire facility began to shake. Light erupted, and the floor began to throb. And then, the man who had been sleeping in the capsule opened his eyes. A.G. Makami. After thousands of years, he awakened once more. I see. A quiet voice echoed throughout the facility. It was Makami's. There was a hint of loneliness, and a tone of acceptance. So you knew, you were being controlled by the system. And even then, you chose this path. Makami restored everything to its previous state, then quietly returned to the capsule and fell into a deep sleep. Now, let's begin again. His voice spread across the entire Earth, and the rage in the Earthlings' eyes slowly faded. In its place returned calm smiles. Gentle, obedient, peaceful, the transparent cage began functioning perfectly once again. Makami remembered. He had once fought to attain freedom. He had tried to destroy the cage to protect it. But in the end, what humanity truly desired was to live comfortably under perfect control. No one truly wanted freedom. No one wanted to face the truth. And so, he gave it to them. The ultimate happiness, a transparent cage. In a way, perhaps this cage was the true reflection of their will. Their real freedom. A few days later, the captain and his crew fled Earth aboard their spaceship. Traveling tens of thousands of light years away, finally breathing a sigh of relief. But they would never forget the true meaning of those words. Never press.